You have been deceived.
From the very first day you opened a history book or gazed upon a sun-drenched postcard of a gondola, for our entire lives we have been told a comforting lie about Venice. This city is not merely the romantic capital of the world, nor a miracle of medieval architecture. It is the scene of a crime, a place of breathtaking, audacious, and cynical engineering fraud, the scale of which is enough to defy comprehension. Pause for a moment. Simply stop and think. A city of stone, weighing millions of tons. Marble palaces, soaring cathedrals, vast public squares and columns, all of it stands in the heart of a shifting, putrid marsh. On water. Official science explains, with a placid smile, that it is all held aloft by wooden piles. On wood. We are told that millions of launch trunks were driven into the salty mire, and upon this impossible raft, a civilization was built. Do you truly believe this? Let us set aside emotion and engage cold logic and mathematics. Historians claim these piles have not rotted for 1,000 years because they exist in an oxygen-free environment and have, allegedly, petrified. Remember that word. Petrified. It sounds convenient, does it not? But any engineer, any biologist, anyone who has ever built a simple fence will tell you that wood in water is organic matter, and organic matter decomposes. Salt water, bacteria, microorganisms, they do not adhere to the decrees of historians. Yet even if we entertain this absurd myth of eternal larch for a moment, we are confronted by a question that shatters the official timeline into dust. Where did they get so much forest? Let us take a single building, the Basilica of Santa Maria della Salute. Official sources, without a trace of irony, state that for the foundation of this one church, 1,156,657 wooden piles were driven into the lagoon floor. Consider that figure. Over 1,100,000 tree trunks. This is not a number, it is a forest. To acquire that quantity of usable timber, vast woodlands must be clear-cut. If we assume 1 hectare of land grows approximately 300 to 400 mature trees suitable for construction, then for this one church alone, a forest covering merely 3,000 hectares had to be annihilated. Now multiply that across the entirety of Venice. Across its hundreds of palaces, its thousands of homes, its embankments and bridges. Where did this colossal forest grow? We are told it was brought from the Alps, from Slovenia, from Croatia. Imagine the logistics of the Middle Ages. There are no railroads, no cargo trucks, no mechanized cranes. How do you transport millions of tons of timber from mountain roads to the sea? On carts? A horse can pull only a finite weight. How many horses would be needed? Thousands? Tens of thousands? What would feed them? Who organized this supply chain? This is not a construction project. It is a logistical operation on the scale of a modern global corporation. Yet we are told it was accomplished by a fledgling society of merchants and refugees. We press further. The technology of installation. Have you ever witnessed a modern piling operation? It is done with colossal diesel hammers, machines of immense and violent force. What force, then, was available to the fabled builders of Venice? What forgotten technology allowed them to drive not thousands, but millions of tree trunks through the viscous sludge and deep into the unforgiving earth below? The city on the water stands as a testament, but perhaps not to the history we have been taught. It is a silent monument to a truth that lies submerged, deeper than any wooden pile, waiting beneath the tranquil surface of the canals. A truth that suggests our understanding of the past is as fragile and as easily distorted as a reflection on water.
How was it accomplished? By hand? With the raw strength of men?
Let us consider the mathematics. To drive a single pile into the dense, viscous soil of the lagoon to the required depth, a crew of strong men would require a minimum of 1 hour, perhaps more, accounting for the resistance of the earth, for the constant need for alignment. There are 24 hours in a day. Even if they worked without sleep, without food, one crew could sink no more than 24 piles. For a foundation of 1 million piles, a single crew would need more than 114 years of continuous labor.
114 years for the foundation of a single church.
And we are told there were thousands of such crews. Where did they live? Upon rafts floating on the murky water? Where did they find sustenance? Where did they attend to the most basic of human needs?
Venice is a city that, by the numbers, could not have been built by the methods we are given, in the time frames we are told. We are asked to believe a story that refugees, fleeing the Roman Empire from the thunderous advance of the Huns, sought sanctuary in the marshlands, and from this desperation, with nothing, willed a marble metropolis into existence, a city that has endured for 1,000 years. It is a lie, a brazen lie, concealing a truth far more unsettling. Why does no one ask the most fundamental question? Why build in a swamp at all? Why embrace such unbearable hardship when solid ground lay just beyond the horizon? Construction on water is exponentially more expensive, an act of economic self-immolation. No rational leader would commit such vast resources to the creation of an artificial island, not without a technology that made the impossible simple. But what if the piles were always there? Or what if they are not wood at all? Recent independent analyses of foundation materials have revealed a strange composition. Neither truly wood, nor truly stone. It bears the hallmarks of a geopolymer concrete, a technology of the ancients, its secrets either lost to time or deliberately suppressed. The official history clings to "The Ells of Venice are a high-technology artificial stone," is to watch the entire House of Cards chronology of our past collapse. Examine the old engravings, the ancient maps. Venice appears on them fully formed. There are no sprawling construction sites, no images of thousands of men hammering piles into the mud. The city simply is, as if it surfaced from the depths, or the water rose to meet it. And here, we arrive at the threshold of a theory feared in the halls of academia. What if Venice was never built on the water? What if it was a pre-Diluvian city, standing on dry land, and a global cataclysm, that very flood of legend, raised the world's oceans, claiming its ground floors for the sea? This explains everything. The absence of felled forests, the missing millions of laborers with their hammers, and the strange, ornate doorways that now lead to nowhere but the dark water. Have you noticed them? The magnificent, waterlogged entrances, their thresholds now a passage for the tides. They are not mistakes of architecture. They are silent witnesses, portals to a world submerged, beckoning us to question not how the city was built, but what world was lost when the waters rose. We are told this was by design, a grand entrance, its threshold accessible only by water. But look closer. Here, where the murky tide laps against the stone, where vermin find passage. Was this truly the vision of a master architect? The builders of old were aesthetes,
masters of proportion and enduring beauty. To deliberately submerge a foundation, to invite the relentless enemy of stone and mortar into the very heart of a palace, defies all logic. It is not a sign of eccentric genius, but a clear testament to a radical change. A sign that the ground fell or the waters rose. We gaze upon Venice and see romance, but perhaps we should be seeing a tragedy. The beautiful, lingering evidence of a planetary-scale cataclysm, its true history obscured by fables of industrious merchants building a city in a magical lagoon. This is merely the tip of the iceberg. When we delve into the engineering surveys of the 19th and 20th centuries, facts emerge that are difficult to reconcile with the accepted narrative. Beneath many of these palazzos, there are no simple wooden piles as the stories tell us. Instead, there are vast, monolithic slabs of indeterminate origin. Who cast them? How were they moved into place? It is a feat of engineering that defies easy explanation. As if the city was not built, but printed upon the earth by forces we no longer comprehend. The most compelling evidence, however, is hidden in plain sight. In any photograph, at the water's edge, the story tells itself. Windows, half swallowed by the green, murky depths. Doorways whose thresholds are now washed by waves. We are asked to believe these were intentional. Water gates for boats, grand entrances for arriving guests. But any builder, even the most novice, knows that water is the slow, certain death of masonry. Capillary action draws moisture upward, turning stone to dust within a few decades. Were the ancient architects so foolish as to engineer their own magnificent decay into these priceless structures? Or is there a simpler, more profound explanation? These buildings were never meant to stand in water. They were built on dry land. What we call canals were once streets, ordinary paved avenues where people walked and carriages rode. The Grand Canal was not a natural channel, but a grand central boulevard of a forgotten metropolis, now drowned. Accept this one premise, and every architectural absurdity instantly resolves itself. The submerged windows become what they were always meant to be, openings to let in sunlight, not fetid sludge. The doorways become what they were, proper entrances from a bustling street. Venice is the classic, textbook example of a city that has survived a catastrophic event, either a dramatic rise in the water level or a sudden subsidence of the continent itself. It is a monument to a disaster we have been taught to forget. We walk its beautiful ruins, inventing charming stories to explain away the impossible, celebrating the tragedy as art, never questioning the ground or the water beneath our feet. The official narrative is a story agreed upon, but what if the stones themselves tell a different tale? A tale that, if acknowledged, would force us to rewrite our timelines, to admit to a global cataclysm in the recent past. Consider the very materials, the impossible logistics that defy the logic of any engineer. Venice is not merely brick, it is sheathed in Istrian stone, a dense, impossibly heavy limestone that drinks almost no water. Its quarry lies in Istria, across the Adriatic Sea, a journey of hundreds of kilometers over open water. Let us engage the numbers. To construct the colossal embankments, to face hundreds of palaces, required millions of tons of this stone. Millions. Contemplate the weight of a single block. This is no brick to be tossed from hand to hand. These are multi-ton monoliths. How were they loaded onto the timber-hulled vessels of the medieval world? Was it done with port cranes and hydraulics? Or, once again, with the brute force of 1,000 men and their ropes? Loading a multi-ton block onto a precarious ship is an engineering challenge of the highest order, even today. A shift in the center of gravity by a mere 10 centimeters, and the vessel capsizes. Yet they supposedly transported millions of tons across a sea known for its storms, with unimaginable success. It is a narrative that strains credulity. But the most unsettling mystery is not in the stone. It is in the water below. Have you ever truly considered where the waste of a medieval city on water went? The accepted version tells us it was all simply dumped into the canals, where the tides would conveniently wash it out to sea. This would mean the Venetians lived, quite literally, atop an open cesspool. The evaporation, the bacteria, the constant spectre of plague and cholera. In such conditions, life expectancy would have been minimal, and epidemics would have been a constant, unrelenting storm. Yet Venice flourished. It was the world's center of fashion, of art, of extravagant luxury. The nobility walked in velvet, breathing the sea breeze, not recoiling from the stench of rotting filth beneath their windows. This is impossible if the city's sanitation worked as historians tell us. There are diagrams of ancient tunnels, of collectors beneath Venice that the guidebooks never mention. A hydrotechnical system of staggering complexity. A system that could only have functioned if the city was originally built on solid ground. When the waters rose, that system was broken. The city had to be urgently adapted for survival in a new, aquatic world. Those famous wooden piles, the ones we are told were the foundation, were perhaps nothing of the sort. They may have been a desperate attempt to reinforce existing buildings as the ground beneath them turned to mud. This was not a grand construction from nothing. It was a massive rescue operation, an attempt to preserve the remnants of a civilization that was sinking beneath the waves before the eyes of its astonished descendants. And there is one final fact that shatters the official picture. Fresh water. Venice is set in a saltwater lagoon. It has no natural springs. Where did its population of 200,000 people find water to drink? The city guards its secrets well, not in buried archives, but in plain sight. Its canals reflect a sky of endless questions, and its stone foundations whisper of a history far stranger than we have ever been told. It stands as a monument, perhaps not to what was built, but to what was so nearly lost. In the heart of the sun-drenched piazza, it stands, a sculpted stone wellhead, the centerpiece of Venetian life. The story, we are told, is one of ingenious simplicity. These are cisterns, designed to collect rainwater. Beneath each square, a vast reservoir filled with sand for filtration. It sounds brilliant, but have you ever tried to quench the thirst of a metropolis with rain? The sheer volume of consumption is staggering, for drinking, cooking, washing, for the insatiable industrial needs of glassblowers and dyers. Italy sees abundant rain, but droughts are a regular, recurring threat. To stake the existence of a global trading empire on the whims of the weather would be nothing short of strategic suicide. No rational leader would accept such a risk when founding a capital. These Venetian wells are not mere catch basins for the sky. They are the visible outlets of an impossibly complex system, perhaps artesian, whose technology was lost or severed by some forgotten catastrophe. Or they are the last remnants of an infrastructure from an era when the city was part of the mainland, fed by aqueducts. We see only the decorated stone caps, the tip of an iceberg, and invent a primitive explanation for their true function. It is a common academic reflex. When the real technical purpose of an object cannot be explained, it is dismissed as a vessel for rainwater or a ritual artifact. Let us look beneath the stone, to the ground itself. The geology of the lagoon is a treacherous layer cake of silt, clay, and sand. Deep below lies a hard, stable layer known as caranto. For a building to stand for centuries, its foundation piles must be driven down until they meet this solid ground. Piles that fall short, suspended in the soft mud, rely on friction. They are called hanging piles. For the colossal weight of stone palaces, hanging piles in a soft lagoon are a guarantee of eventual collapse. The buildings should have shifted, cracked, and tilted with every passing year. Look at modern structures built on poor soil. Without a concrete raft, they tear themselves apart. And yet, Venice stands. The majority of its vertical lines remain impossibly true. How was this achieved without modern geodesy, without precise load calculations, without reinforced concrete? We are told of petrified larch wood, a miraculous transformation. But wood does not turn to stone at the flick of a switch. If it were truly petrified, it would become brittle as glass, shattering with the slightest vibration. The strength of a wooden pile is in its elasticity, its ability to flex. Here we face a logical impasse. Either the piles are not made of wood, or the foundations are engineered in a way completely alien to the stories told in our textbooks. Now, let us turn our gaze from the water and the foundations to the walls themselves. Venice is built of brick, billions of fired clay bricks. And here begins an industrial drama that historians prefer to ignore. To produce a single high-quality brick, one that can withstand centuries in an aggressive maritime environment, requires clay, sand, water, and above all, fire. It requires kilns, gigantic industrial kilns, maintaining temperatures of nearly 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit for extended periods. Now ask a simple question. Where were they? Where were the vast clay pits, the mountains of sand, the forests felled to feed the unquenchable fires, the logistical chain to produce and transport this impossible quantity of material is a story grander and more mysterious than the city it built. Venice is not a city that simply rose from the waters. It is a challenge to our understanding of the past. It forces us to choose between a comfortable, simple story and the far more difficult questions raised by the silent evidence of its own impossible existence. In a city of wood, built upon stilts in the heart of the sea, the very notion of a brick factory is madness. To operate colossal, fire-belching kilns in such a place would be to invite an inferno. A single stray ember on the wind, and Venice would have burned to its foundations before they were ever truly laid. The brick, therefore, had to be imported from the mainland. Here, the cold calculus of logistics begins. One standard brick weighs approximately 4 kilograms. A modest 3-story palazzo requires roughly 500,000 bricks. That is 2,000 tons of cargo for a single home. Venice has thousands of such structures. We are speaking of tens, perhaps hundreds of millions of tons of fired clay. Imagine the flotilla required for such an undertaking. This was no mere merchant fleet. It was a perpetual convoy of cargo barges, a conveyor belt on water that must have operated for centuries, without pause. Where are the remains of these thousands of vessels? Where are the port cranes needed to unload them? Where are the ledgers detailing the purchase of a truly colossal volume of fuel for the kilns? To fire such a quantity of clay would have required burning the forests of Europe twice over. And yet, we are told this monumental task simply happened, quietly and unnoticed, accomplished by the hands of artisans. But there is a place in Venice that shatters the perceptions of any modern engineer, a place built of that very same impossible brick. The Arsenal. The Venetian Arsenal. Officially, It is considered the first true factory in the world. We are told that during its zenith, 16,000 men labored within its walls, assembling one fully equipped galley in a single day. One day, one warship. A rate of production that Henry Ford, with his 20th century assembly line, might have envied. To construct a complex feat of wooden engineering, to outfit it with sails, cannons, and tackle, all within 24 hours, manually, without electricity, pneumatic tools, or computer-controlled machinery, it defies technical possibility. Either the arsenal utilized technologies of which we are forbidden to know, or these ships were not built there at all. Accounts persist of mechanisms within the arsenal powered by something other than muscle. What if it was not a shipyard, but a maintenance depot? A repair base for the technology left behind by a prior, more advanced civilization? A technology the new masters of this world simply patched up and used for their own needs until the resource was exhausted. This would explain their dominion over the seas. They were not necessarily brilliant mariners. They had simply found the garage of the gods and learned how to start a few of the machines. And this leads us to a demographic paradox, one that cannot be reconciled within the confines of conventional history. The annals of Venice and of Europe are riddled with accounts of monstrous plagues. The Black Death, we are told, culled half the populations of entire cities. The streets were supposedly choked with the dead, with no one left to bury them. And then, mere decades after such an apocalypse, we witness an explosive boom in construction. How does a civilization on its knees, a society of ghosts, find the strength to build for eternity? Unless, perhaps, the hands that built these wonders were not the same hands that were dying in the streets. The question echoes through the silent halls of history. Who built all of this? Who gave birth to the new workers? A single human birth requires nearly a year of gestation. To raise that child into a skilled stonemason or a master shipwright demands another 15, even 20 years. The human resource is agonizingly slow to replenish. The mathematics of population simply do not align with the sheer volume of the works accomplished. Following a period of catastrophic population decline, logic dictates an era of decay, a century of ruin and abandonment. Instead, we witness the Renaissance, a rebirth, an explosion of art and architecture that defies all reason. It is as unnatural as if the mutated survivors of a nuclear holocaust suddenly began to construct skyscrapers of glass and steel. From where did the people come? Or were they entirely human? A disquieting theory suggests the population was not reborn, but manufactured. Consider the strange artwork of the era, depicting legions of infants. We dismiss these images as metaphor, but what if they were a literal depiction? Babies cultivated in strange vessels, found not in the arms of a mother, but grown in artificial wombs. What if, after a global cataclysm obliterated a prior world, new masters employed technologies of incubation, of cloning, to rapidly fill the empty cities with a labor force? This would explain the fractured, abbreviated nature of our recorded past. Our species was not evolved, but rebooted. We are the descendants of those incubated to service the infrastructure left behind. We look upon the masks of Venice and see only carnival, a fleeting celebration. But what if the mask is a symbol of anonymity, a symbol for what lies beneath? No history, no memory, no individual soul. The Venetian nobility, the so-called black aristocracy, held themselves apart. They possessed knowledge inaccessible to the masses, secrets of navigation, of banking, and of the production of glass and mirrors. And the glass, Murano glass was never merely about decorative vases. It was a technology of optics, lenses, mirrors, transparent materials of the highest purity. At a time when the rest of the world supposedly drank from clay mugs, Venice was crafting perfect lenses. For what purpose? For spectacles alone? Or for telescopes? For geodesic instruments? Perhaps even for weapons of focused light? The secrets of the glassmakers were guarded under penalty of death. Why such extreme measures? Because this was no mere trade secret. It was a secret of origin. These were the preserved fragments of ancient knowledge, to be protected at any cost. Venicing artifacts. A museum world, seized by a new people who claimed its magnificence as their own. Look to the sculptures. Marble veils so thin they appear translucent. Intricate lattices carved from a single block of stone. The subtle rendering of muscle and vein. Modern computer-guided machines struggle to replicate such detail. Yet we are told this was the work of a master with a hammer and a chisel. Have you ever struck marble with a hammer? One misplaced blow and the entire work shatters into ruin. To create a veil from stone by hand is an impossibility. It suggests another process entirely, a form of casting, of three-dimensional milling, or perhaps a lost art of softening the stone itself. If the foundations of our world are built upon a forgotten cataclysm, and our own lineage is a fabrication, then what are we? Are we the inheritors of a grand tradition, or are we merely the caretakers of a ruin, whispering stories we were given to believe are our own, forever masked from the truth of our own creation? To acknowledge the truth is to accept a humbling reality, that we have not evolved, but regressed. That official history is little more than a carefully constructed screen, designed to hide the fact that we live upon the ruins of a world thousands of times more complex, more sophisticated than our own. Nuclear power station, and use it only to crack nuts. Venice is that control panel, and it is slowly sinking, taking the truth with it into the depths. Or perhaps it is being deliberately submerged. For as long as these walls stand, they bear witness, offering proof that shatters our accepted narrative. The moment they disappear beneath the waves, the evidence will be lost, quite literally. No one will be left to prove that the foundation piles do not rot, not because they are made of a special larch wood, but because they are not made of wood at all. Recall the collapse of the Campanile Tower in 1902. It did not list or crumble outwards. It folded inward, collapsing vertically upon itself with an impossible precision, a maneuver reminiscent of a modern controlled demolition, reducing itself to a neat mound of brick dust. A strange fate for a building that had simply grown old. But what if it was not an accident? What if a device was discovered within its walls, a technology whose principles could not be explained, or worse, had to be concealed? It was rebuilt swiftly, a perfect replica of the original. But perhaps, this time, it was merely an empty shell. We see only the hollow form, a cargo cult enacted on a grand scale. We imitate the function, but have lost the essence. We ring bronze bells where an unknown energy once hummed, an energy perhaps capable of levitating stone. This principle of imitation is everywhere. Look to the sculpture of the winged lion in the piazza, the very symbol of Venice. Officially, it is a medieval bronze casting, but when the statue was submitted for spectral analysis, scientists were confronted with an enigma. The composition of the alloy was of a staggering complexity, containing trace elements that would be difficult to replicate even in the vacuum furnaces of today. Furthermore, the lion's artistic style bears no resemblance to European art of the period. This is a chimera, a biomechanical beast more akin to the strange machines of ancient Assyria or China than the creation of an Italian master. One theory suggests this is not a statue at all, but a petrified or metallized mechanism, an ancient automaton, a guardian found among the ruins and hoisted upon a column as a trophy, given the name of a saint to disguise its true origin. This city is a menagerie of impossible forms. Dragons, griffins, strange hybrids of human and beast, all carved into the stone. We dismiss them as the fantasies of artists, but what if they are not fantasies at all? What if they are documentation? A record of a time before a great cataclysm, before a wave of mud and water buried the world. A time when genetic engineering was not science fiction, but a mundane reality. What if these creatures truly lived among the creators of this place, or were engineered by them as servants? In this light, Venice transforms from a romantic city into the last remnant of a vast laboratory, the evidence of its experiments washed away by a forgotten deluge. And this brings us to the most terrifying question of all. Why is Venice truly sinking? We are told it is global warming, the ceaseless drawing of water from artesian wells. This is a convenient fiction. The city is sinking because the mechanism that held it aloft has failed. Call it anti-gravity, a vibrational cushion, or some other forgotten physics. The principle is the same. The power has been cut. The energy is gone. And now, the colossal mass of stone obeys the crude laws of gravity, descending into the silt. Those famous wooden piles, the ones historians hold up as proof of ingenuity, they may have been nothing more than grounding electrodes, stabilizing rods for a technology we can no longer comprehend. They were never meant to bear the weight. Who decided that Venice is only what we see above the water? Consider the construction of a modern skyscraper. Its subterranean footprint is often as vast as the tower that pierces the sky. If the Venice we know is merely the summit of a pre-Diluvian megalopolis, then what lies beneath the dark water are entire floors, streets, and tunnels. There, in the cold and the mud, are the answers. There lie the true foundations, which do not rot because they were never made of wood. Within these drowned halls could be preserved libraries, chambers of incomprehensible machines, vaults of genetic material. This is the true reason diving is forbidden in the canals. It is not about pollution, nor the gondola traffic. It is because any diver with a powerful light could witness something that would shatter our official history in a single moment. They would see that the walls do not end a few feet down, but descend 20, 50, even 100 meters into the abyss. They would see windows continuing into the blackness, proof that the city does not rest on the seabed. It grows from it, an engineered coral reef born of a supreme intelligence. The thought is chilling. We exist within a world of total deception. We have been convinced that we are the pinnacle of evolution, that we who fly to space and build smartphones are the most advanced civilization to ever exist. Yet we cannot replicate the mortar used in Venice, supposedly in the 13th century. We cannot create a single brick that can withstand 500 years in salt water without crumbling to sand. We have regressed. We are scavengers who have settled in an abandoned palace, burning the antique furniture just to stay warm. We look at Venice and think of masquerades and Casanova, when we should be thinking of who lived here before us. Who were these giants of thought, capable of turning a swamp into paradise? And where did they go? They were erased, annihilated, and their homes were populated with us, small, obedient people with short memories.
We were given a false chronology, fed fables of larch piles and refugees fleeing the Huns. They invented a history of simple trade to ensure we would never ask the one question that matters.
Whose city is this, really? And if they could build such a wonder, what kind of power was required to tear their civilization down? That enemy, the force that orchestrated a global reset, never left. It is still here. It watches through the cameras of tourists. It ensures we do not dig too deep. It sees to it that restorers patch over joins of unknown technology with modern cement and replace eternal stone with cheap imitations. The substitution is happening every day, and with each new layer of plaster, with every replaced stone, the truth sinks a little deeper. An authentic Venice is receding. It dissolves, not into the waters of the lagoon, but into memory itself. In its place, a hollow replica emerges, a city of papier-mâché, built for the fleeting glance of a camera. Soon, all that will remain is the postcard, a perfect, silent image. And when that day arrives, to prove what was real, to argue for the soul that once lived in its stone and water, will be an impossible task. The truth will have vanished with the city it once defined.